Welcome, candidates and audience members, to the Mountain View Los Altos High School Board of Trustees Candidate Forum. I'm Carol Rhodes with the League of Women Voters, Los Altos Mountain View. First, a few housekeeping items. Today's forum will last 1 hour. Please understand that we can't provide technical assistance to attendees of a webinar. All forums will be recorded and available the day after each event on our elections page, which is LWV-LA-MV.org. That's LWV-LA-MV.org, and also on our YouTube channel. Questions for candidates were submitted with registrations. We've combined similar questions to be able to cover as wide a range of topics as possible. The chat feature won't be available in this webinar. The League of Women Voters is a nonprofit organization of women and men that promotes informed, active participation in government. We do not support, oppose, or evaluate political candidates or parties, but after careful study, we do take positions on political issues. The League invites anyone who is interested in supporting democracy and local government to please join us. Here's the format for today's forum. Each candidate will make a 1-minute opening statement. Next will be questions, which were selected to be relevant to all candidates and to provide useful information to the audience about issues in this race. Candidates will be given 60 seconds to respond unless I indicate otherwise. Finally, each candidate will have 1 minute to make a closing statement. An electronic timer will display each candidate's remaining time and will randomly shuffle the order of candidates responding to questions. We ask our candidates to abide by the following rules. First, time limits. When the timer line turns red, I will say thank you. Please just complete your sentence then. 2, respect. Candidates will not interrupt each other. And 3, fairness. Campaign marketing materials will not be visible on a candidate's screen. I'd like now to introduce the 3 candidates who are running for 2 open seats on the Mountain View Los Altos High School Board of Trustees. Please raise your hand as you're introduced. Sanjay Dave. Phil Felice. And Laura Teksler. Thank you all for participating in today's forum. We're now ready to begin opening statements. Sanjay Dave first.
Hi, my name is Sanjay Dave, and I'm passionate about public education. In 2008, we deemed banks too big to fail, but this pandemic has demonstrated that our public education institutions are also too big to fail. This pandemic has created a renewed appreciation for our public schools, and especially in our district, where we offer one of the highest quality high school educations in the country. One that prepares our students to strongly succeed when they continue their pursuits at other higher education institutions or start a career. I know that I have the knowledge, experience, commitment to help keep MVLA the strong high school district it is, not only in academics, but also in our sports, music, arts, and other programs. I'm also a proud parent of a 10th grader at Mountain View High School and a daughter in college. In my first term, I've demonstrated that I can and will work with the community, teachers, staff, and my fellow board members to make our district better. I hope you'll allow me to continue to work in that regard and that you'll give me your vote. I look forward to answering your questions that we'll address today.
Thank you. Phil Felice.
Thank you. I seek re-election to ensure that our students' high school education does for them what mine did for me. It motivated me and prepared me, a working class grandson of 4 peasant immigrants, to win scholarships to Princeton, Stanford, and Oxford, and enabled my family to thrive in the MVLA community for 52 years, of which the last 37 include 24 years of successful experience as a trustee for MVLA and 13 for LASD. I work for all students to leave MVLA having learned to be as intellectually, emotionally, and physically robust as they could possibly be. That requires continually improving academic achievement for all students at all levels, enhancing mental health, and increasing real-time parent-district communication, all while preventing COVID-19 from impairing stakeholder health and students' progress.
Thank you. And now Laura Teksler.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting the forum. I am Laura Teksler. I'm a mother of two boys. One is a graduate of Los Altos High School, and the other is currently a senior at the school. And I myself am a product of California's public education system, and I now dedicate myself to volunteering in our community. I have served in leadership roles in PTAs and educational foundations. I currently serve as the Executive Vice President of Los Altos High School PTSA and on the MVLA Foundation Board. I also serve on nonprofit boards and currently co-chair Los Altos Community Foundation. I also have civic experience on the City of Los Altos Environmental Commission, where I currently serve as vice chair. One of my favorite volunteer roles has been as co-chair of the high school's STEAM Week because it's shown me the brilliance and dedication of our students, teachers, and parents. And I'm running for school board to be the voice of families. And my timer has gone off and won't stop.
Thank you. Thank you all. We'll now turn to questions. The first question goes to Sanjay. What are the most important responsibilities of a school board member, and how do they impact the district?
The most important role of the school board member is the hiring of the superintendent and, maybe firing of the superintendent. That is the most important role. But also sets the standards, the vision of the school district. And so in doing that, they are going to set what the expectations are, what our overall goals that we want the district to meet. And we work collaboratively with our other board members, the staff to work towards those goals and set policies in order for us to achieve them.
Thank you. Laura?
So a board member sets a strategic direction, and from that should set the clear and measurable goals for the chief executive, which is of course the superintendent, so that everybody's working towards what the same measure of success is. And as a board member, you receive information from staff and you evaluate that and provide strategic direction. And I'm a firm believer of not micromanaging and allowing the staff who are the professional educators to do the hands-on work and again, providing the strategic direction. And then a very important role of a board is the public input process and listening to those people who have taken the time to come and provide input to the board. And I would advocate for making it actually a more engaging process. So it's not just those who come to a board meeting to make a comment, but also reaching out and engaging more in a dialogue with the public.
And Phil.
Yes. Sanjay did a nice job summarizing what the responsibilities are, but I want to get to the process of how a board member affects change, because the most important thing a board member can do is to make improvements in the educational system over which he presides. And that involves team building and building a culture of mutual respect between the administration and the school board, because together they form the leadership team of the district. And that leadership team is the one that has to drive innovation, improvement, and equity throughout the community of the MVLA schools. As part of that job, we have to listen to all of the stakeholders, listen and hear what they say. But as I often remind people, listening is not obeying. We listen to what you say, but our job is to balance the interests. That means each of us will approach it from a different perspective, and that's okay.
Thank you. For the second question, we'll begin with Phil. What experience, strengths, and qualities will contribute to your effectiveness as an MVLA board member?
Okay. So I point out that I have 37 years experience, but beyond that, I have been a board chairman of CHAC and the High School Foundations Board, MVLA's representation to the High School Board, a founder of the Los Altos Educational Foundation, two-term president of the Los Altos High School Curriculum Advisory Council while still an ALSD trustee, and I served on the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Committee on Affordable Housing. My 4 professional careers made me acutely aware of what makes good teachers and good students, taught me how to manage difficult personalities and demanding jobs, and taught me to develop a culture of mutual respect and trust among them, to build effective, efficient teams, and to listen closely to others by asking the right questions and pressing for complete answers. So have the years between my younger daughter's high school education and the present, for they have enabled me. Thank you.
And Laura.
So again, my nonprofit leadership experience would help me with some of the goals I talked about in the last question: strategic leadership, overseeing the chief executive. My role on the Environmental Commission has taught me about the civic experience, the civic process, how you balance the needs of a diverse set of community interests, and what it is to be a public servant. But probably, again, some of my most engaging roles and insightful roles have been in PTSA, again, serving on STEAM Week. And last year, as part of my role in PTSA, I met with the every club that had submitted for a grant from our organization, and just seeing the passion and engagement that those students have and how they care deeply about everything going on around them. That is what I would keep in the forefront as I make decisions as a board member.
Thank you. Sanjay.
Yes. So what makes a strong school board member is you need to have a guiding principle that drives you to work on each of the issues that comes to the board. So my guiding principle is putting students first. And that's what drives me to create a better school district for all of our students. I've shown that I'm an active listener, strong collaborator, and good negotiator. And I've shown this on working with stadium lights, facilities master plan, and a citywide school strategy. For many of the complex issues, it takes a village, and we need people to know how to work with others and to move issues forward. Also, my engineering background has trained me to appreciate data, and I use that experience and skills to work with our district on how to create better ways to analyze the data we had. For example, I worked with the district to start analyzing the 11th grade SBAC scores, what the scores those students received in eighth grade, so we can use that, and relatively speaking, we can see if we're advancing those students as we've educated them for the last two and a half years, and see if we made improvements with those students. So those are the skills, some of the skills that I bring to as a school board member.
Thank you. Our next question will go first to Sanjay. How would you assess the financial health of MVLA District?
So overall, I think we're in pretty good health. I think this pandemic has shown that we have been very responsible with our finances by creating a reserve fund that allows us to dip into, when issues like emergencies like this pandemic has come up as we experienced this time. And So I think we've been very, we've made very sound fiscal decisions throughout the years. It also allowed us to, not only that allowed us to make those sound fiscal decisions, when we went out for a bond for Measure E, we got the lowest interest rate possible for schools, and in the entire state. And that shows that not only about our community, but also our school district as a whole, and how, when they analyzed our financial, our financial accounting.
Thank you. Phil?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so the success that Sanjay has described over the past 4 years is something that has been going on for at least 24 years during my experience. And that is, we have always managed the budget so that we have conservative estimates of how much revenue we will be receiving and realistic estimates of what we will be willing to spend. So as a result of that, we enjoy an extremely high credit rating. As Sanjay hinted, we are in the top of California. Beyond that, over those years, we have managed the budget in bad times when our revenues were not living up to expectations in such a way as to maintain the educational excellence of our programs. In other words, we kept the harm away from schools and from kids, primarily from kids in the classroom. That is the ultimate goal of good budget management.
Thank you. Laura?
So I think in their answers that Phil and Sanjay talked very well about how financially healthy our district has been for a very long time. And even this year, the pandemic has not yet adversely affected the budget, which is great. But my concern, and as a member of the Citizens Advisory Council on Finance for the Los Altos School District, I know that we're looking at what's going to be coming in the next couple of years, because school districts are funded mainly through property tax values. And so we need to start looking at what are the projections for, again, next year we should likely be fine on assessed property values, but going forward, we could likely see some either decrease in growth there or even worse. And so we need to start planning for that and ensuring that we're in a good position to handle any decreased revenue.
All right, question number 4 goes to Phil first. What is the greatest challenge facing the MVLA School District over the next 2 years?
The greatest challenge is managing the threat from COVID-19. McKinsey Company did a study published back in June indicating that if we stay in distance learning or hybrid learning for a full year, the damage done will be a 50% loss on average in learning. And it is much worse for disadvantaged students. So they are going to—
internet sucks.
An even greater loss. So the task there is twofold: prevent the damage from getting too bad, and what we can't prevent, repair as quickly as possible. And to do that, we need a rapid response system which identifies learning loss as it's occurring, identifies social problems as they are occurring, and treats them, and then plans for remediation.
Thank you, Phil. Sanjay?
So as Phil mentioned, the most immediate priority is the distance learning and dealing with this and making sure that we don't know how long we're going to be in it. We know we're in it for at least this semester, and it may go into next semester. We are still, looking at what the status will be as we move forward. And so making sure that our distance learning is as robust as possible to make sure all of our students are engaged and learning, and we're getting through the curriculum, but they're also learning at the high quality that we expect out of our district. And then moving forward, we have to prepare for this post-pandemic world. And I think Phil had mentioned this as well. And, so we need to look at, how do we make sure we have preparedness plans in place now for a pandemic that more than likely will happen. Maybe not in the next 2 years, maybe later, but we need to start preparing for that today. And so we also need to start preparing for when schools open, and that's the other, and how would schools open? So,
thank you, Laura.
So I'm going to have a little bit of a different take on what obviously distance learning and the pandemic is a very prevalent challenge, but I would actually say that the mental health of our students is rising up as what I think one of our main challenges right now. And a lot of that is because of the isolation that they're experiencing through distance learning. But there was an issue there prior to the pandemic. We know that even last year, this time, we were seeing a big increase in the number of students who were being referred to chat counselors. So that points to an underlying issue that we need to be addressing. And, if our students aren't mentally and physically healthy, then, the education really can't happen. So that's one of the main issues I would want to begin addressing. And of course, distance learning is a huge barrier to that.
Thank you. Thank you. The next question, sorry, I had a little technical glitch there. The next question will begin with Phil. There are many passionate stakeholders, including teachers and parents. How can they contribute to district level decision making?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? The board was shuffling as you were speaking and I wasn't sure I was going next.
There are many passionate stakeholders, including teachers and parents. How can they contribute to district level decision making?
Oh, yes, this is very important, a favorite of mine. I believe we have not done a good job recently of doing this. We did do a very good job when we were discussing the issue of field lights, which was also a very emotional, passionate issue. And we succeeded in that because instead of having to work with a large group, we were able to cooperate with the leaders of that large group to form smaller subgroups, each interested in a specific part of the problem. That is a model we need to follow whenever we have an issue of large concern to the community. By that process, we can work separately on the various parts, come to agreement on those, and then integrate them into a coherent whole, which we address in policy. This has to involve teachers as well as parents and students as well as parents, because all voices are important and have a perspective to voice.
Thank you. Sanjay?
Yes, could you repeat the question again?
Yes. There are many passionate stakeholders, including teachers and parents. How can they contribute to district level decision making?
Well, I think it's important to involve them early and often. We've seen that when we looked at the late start bell schedule, where got them involved. I met with many of them, at coffee just to understand, because we have a lot of local experts here as well as child psychologists to help us understand the critical issues that children are facing, but also the teachers as well, because they are the experts, and the quality of our district is directly related to the quality of our teachers, and so we need to bring them into the conversation as early as we can as well. And so these stakeholders, as we discuss these larger issues, we need to work together collaboratively, try to create a goal that we want to achieve in those decisions, and then work together to make that happen. As Phil had mentioned, we work together with our neighbors and our district staff and teachers for our stadium lights, but we've also done that with our citywide strategy, working with other officials as well.
Thank you. Laura?
So I'm, can you hear me? Okay, so I'm going to, again, come back to what our current situation is with distance learning. And I do have to say that from a parent perspective, the communication has not been there. So I would like to see some community conversations, some town hall conversations between the board and the parents, because there is some major issues getting decided, and we're basically hearing about them through a newsletter. And that really, I think, leaves a lot of families feeling disempowered and not able to be participating in really critical educational issues for their students. So there needs to be, I think, a lot more opportunity that's not just in the middle of a 5-hour board meeting for families to be informed and participate.
Thank you. We're shuffling. All right, the next question will go first to Laura. The community has expressed concern about systemic racism. What is the district's role in addressing this?
Well, luckily, some of the community members who are very concerned about this has brought a very clear set of asks to the district and things to investigate. And so I think starting with that petition and looking at all the different pieces of it is a good place to start. I do think having conversation about whether SROs are the right position to be supporting our students on campus, because it's a student resource officer. And if that position is not supportive of students who are in need of resources, then we need to be having that conversation about how better to support them. I think continuing the discussion about ethnic studies and the proper curriculum to implement in ethnic studies is another good piece of that petition, as well as teacher training and other ways to increase the social equity of teaching.
Thank you. Phil.
Yes. Well, I want to correct the impression that the petition was the impetus to start discussing this. All of those items have been discussed for many years now. We've been rooting out racism in our curriculum for at least the last dozen years that I've been around here. It's part of our building of an inclusive environment where everybody feels welcome and at home. So we have been working on that. We do regular reviews of the materials we use, looking for this. If we have to get sharper at it, we can, but we will do that. The important thing is that everyone feels safe, no one feel ostracized for who they are. We were among the earliest school districts to recognize LGBTQ+ rights and institute bathroom facilities and things like that. There were difficulties, it wasn't perfect, but we do that. We pay attention to all of these problems, and we will continue to.
Thank you, Phil. Sanjay?
Yeah. So, the tragedies that happened over the summer in our nation has caused our nation to basically do a reset and kind of look inwardly again at racism, discrimination in our country, and likewise as a district, we're doing that, and this petition that has come upon us has kind of caused us to look at that as well. I think Phil's right. We've done many things to many policies that we've looked at to make sure that we have equity in our schools, that we rid our schools of discrimination, but we are always looking that we can do better. And that's what we're looking at. And that's what I think this petition is asking us to do. How can we do better than what we're doing today? And so, yes, so we're having these dialogues internally. We're creating an equity alliance committee to actually look at many of the issues that the petition has brought up. And I think these are important conversations to have. And we need to continuously improve our district to make sure we do rid our district of any discrimination or racism.
Thank you. The next question is an opportunity to elaborate on the last one. It goes first to Laura, and it is, what specific steps do you support taking to ensure racial equity in our schools?
So you cut out a little bit. Can you repeat the question?
Yes, happy to. What specific steps do you support taking to ensure racial equity in our schools?
So yeah, I would expand again on what I started talking about at the last question. You know, I do think re-examining how we have police officers operating on campus is a good measure that we should be taking. And I think that, again, the teacher, the training, the professional development around cultural competency, and that would infuse into all all courses, not just, for example, certain courses, to have teachers understanding how to teach all students from all backgrounds, I think is, another good place to start.
Thank you. Sanjay?
Yeah, so I think, there are many things that we're looking, there's implicit bias training to make sure all of our teachers and staff and even our board members, we go through on an annual basis to make sure that awareness is there. I think awareness is one of the most important things we have to make sure is consistent. That's something you have to do every year. So we're understanding the cultures, the sensitivities that all of our students and the backgrounds that they come from. But one thing that I think is also important in terms of equity is in terms of how when we look at academic metrics for our students. One of the things that we do and required by the state, we have to break everything down in demographics. We got our Asians, we have our whites, and then we have our Hispanic students and African American. We kind of go through that. But one of the things when we hired a consultant about almost 5 years ago now, one of the things that they shared with us is it's better to look at socioeconomic disadvantaged groups as opposed to race. And I think that will give us more understanding of what the issues are rather than, putting people in buckets of race.
Thank you. Phil.
Yes, thank you. So I agree it's a very bad idea to put people in buckets because of race, but we have to face the fact that race does play a role in student performance and comfort at school. That is inevitable, and we have to deal with it and find a way to treat it. There are three major things that I want to address with respect to the petition. One is the issue of SROs. The second is the issue of a ethnic studies curriculum. And the third is the more general issue of vestigial racism in our institutions. So let me begin with the with the ethnic studies program. I think that's an opportunity to build an inclusive program that makes everybody feel welcome at school. That is the opportunity that must be seized. It must not become a platform for a particular ideology that divides us. Now, I'm running out of time, so I'll refer you to my website for the rest of it.
Thank you, Phil. I think we have a reprieve for you because the next question drills down a little bit farther on this. And it goes first to you. Do you support having SROs, school resource officers, on campus, and why?
Okay. Two main issues here. safety and opportunity. Safety first. I worry about an active shooter on campus. I worry about a fight between two very strong guys that a person could not break up without training. And that is something an SRO could do. Further, on the issue of safety is the availability in case of an emergency, like someone coming on campus for nefarious purposes. I think the quicker people can react, the better. In terms of opportunity, remember, the people who the officers of the law are supposed to protect should not be afraid of them. We have to use this as an opportunity to build strong relationships between those groups.
Thank you. Sanjay.
Yeah, so for SRO officer, I think we need to understand, and I think maybe the community needs to understand as well, is what is all the roles that an SRO officer has in our schools. And yes, as Phil mentioned, safety is primarily one of them. It's not just for a shooter that may come on campus, but actually what happens mostly, informing the staff if there's gangs that are going to be coming onto campus, or there's gangs starting on campus, or drugs coming into our campuses. So they are able to educate our staff. They're also, yes, they're able to, if violence breaks out, they can help the staff be able to deal with that. But they also create relationships with many of our students and their families to provide resources. They also do career training for many of our students as well. Now, all these other roles that positive roles that SRO officers play, is there a better way that we can do that? I'm open to those discussions and to look at those, that maybe there is a better way than having SROs on campus, and I would be open to that idea.
Thank you. Laura?
Yeah, so I would again go back to what was the original intent of having an SRO on campus and evaluate it from there. If it is truly supposed to be to support our students, what is the best resource for that? My main concern about removing SROs is, this is a position provided through the police departments, which is paid for by the city. So I wouldn't want to lose a resource, because yes, they are doing things that are important and helpful on campus. So how do we retain the resource, but funnel it into a position that might better support our students? And the second piece of it is, well, yes, we are still going to have activity on campus that's going to require police to come to campus. That's a reality, whether it be drugs or fights. So then we need to ensure that the police officers that are coming to campus are well trained and know how to interact with our students in a respectful manner.
Thank you. Now we're going to shift gears. And the next question will go first to Laura. What needs to happen before all students can return safely to in-person instruction? And what processes, including testing, should be in place to ensure the staff and students are safe? And this is a 90-second question. Each of you will have 90 seconds to respond. Laura?
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to repeat the question again. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to repeat. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, no, I'm happy to. What needs to happen before all students can return safely to in-person instruction? And what processes, including testing, should be in place to ensure the staff and students are safe?
So I think the biggest question is, having the goal of 100% safety or ensuring some really high level of safety, to me, says that we're not going to get back to school anytime soon. So I think the confrontation with students, families, and teachers needs to be, what level of safety can we reasonably expect to have before we can go back to school. I think, yes, testing is a piece of it. Of course, all of the safety precautions that I think that, the district has already been working a lot on the facilities. I think the biggest challenge that I see is the logistics of scheduling and how to design a hybrid system with such large campuses and such high numbers of students, how to design the schedule in order to accommodate the proper distancing. And so if we're going to do that, we need to be looking at doing that at the semester to build that into the scheduling systems so that we're ensuring students have the classes that they need to have, but that we're designing a schedule that would allow for a hybrid system.
Thank you. Phil.
Yes, thank you. The big problem here is that we are going to have a very limited in-person instruction program if this pandemic is still on. And we have to deal with that. And dealing with that requires teacher confidence so that teachers feel confident about coming back. I believe it's important to give everyone a choice to assess their tolerance for risk with the risks involved. That means we have to be able to express the risk in terms that are meaningful, and we have to know the measures that will reduce the risk to a level that most people would consider tolerable, not everyone. Now, are we doing that? We are missing something vital from the county. The county's guidance is not aimed at preventing the spread of the virus on campus. To do that, I turned to the Duke study called a national turning point, a national decision point, which described the things that have to be done. They include on-campus testing for rapid detection and isolation of cases, very high quality filters and air recirculation systems, and a quick means of getting people off campus and safely isolated when they're detected.
Thank you. Sanjay?
Yeah, can you repeat the question just again, make sure I understand?
Certainly. What needs to happen before all students can return safely to in-person instruction? And what processes, including testing, should be in place to ensure the staff and students are safe?
Right. So to basically reopen our schools for, like you said, all students to come into in-person learning is, as Philip mentioned, yes, we need to get confidence with the teachers. Teachers need to feel confident that we have created an environment that they feel safe, that they can come into our campuses and teach, and that the risk is very low for them to get COVID. But where we need to work very closely with is with the county. The county needs to offer us practical guidelines to be able to open to in-person learning. And so right now, the county guidelines, even if we move from red to orange to yellow, the requirements and recommendations do not change. They still require desks to be 6 feet apart. The teacher has to be 6 feet apart with plexiglass. And so that really is not practical for our size of high schools. And so we need to really look at, okay, what are the guidelines from the county health and the county board of education that would allow our schools to open full in person and basically go back to normal in-person classes. We haven't seen that kind of guidance yet from the county or the state. And that's what I think that's important because they're the experts. They're the ones who are going to get the data to be able to show us that information. And then we need to then move along those guidelines. We need to make sure our facilities are prepared to be able to bring students in class, to have all the proper equipment in place, and then put the policies in place for families who may not still want to have their child come back to campus and be able to provide those options as well.
Thank you. The next question is on the same topic. It's also a 90-second question. And it will go first to Sanjay. How is the effectiveness of distance learning being evaluated? And what improvements should be considered?
So that's a great question. And it's a very complicated question, and I appreciate it because we have to look at two metrics, two general areas of metrics. One is a quantitative method, looking at attendance, looking at grades, looking at scores on exams, and those are some quantitative metrics we can look to see how well our students are engaged in learning. And the other is qualitative. What is the what is the quality of the work that the students are pursuing? Are we seeing students be able to kind of show their video in the classroom and be able to participate? And how are they participating? Are they showing engaged? Are they asking questions? Are they working with the other students and the teachers? So we have to look at all these other metrics to be able to assess how well we are doing in distance learning. And, and I know that a lot of our teachers, because I've gone to the classrooms and I've talked to teachers, and I know a lot of them are, they are doing these evaluations. And, a lot of them are saying, yes, there is some learning loss that's happening because they're seeing this for all students, that the level is not the same as if it was when they were in-person learning. And so we are seeing that. So we have to look at how we can improve, but ultimately we know that distance learning is not a replacement for in-person learning.
Thank you. Laura?
So I think one of the most fundamental pieces of evaluating whether distance learning is working is that just the access to the proper technology and a place to learn from. And we know that there are students out there who, while the district's been working really hard to, get the technology to them. I mean, I'm here in Los Altos. I have all the resources. I can't get a working internet. So I can't imagine how students who, are sitting in homes with multiple family members and, trying to use technology that's just not up to par to learn. I just don't understand how they can be managing that. So that's kind of the basic level. And then you have the level of, the students that at least have the technology. How engaged are they? Like, Sanjay was talking about, and I do have to say that the teachers have done an incredible job in improving the quality of an instruction in distance learning from between spring and fall. And they're using a lot of tools that have really made it much better. But again, we have to keep coming back to the point that we know it really just cannot measure up to in-person learning, and that the isolation and the other factors that children are experiencing, students are experiencing, may be overshadowing how much learning they can.
Thank you. Phil?
Yes. So the question was, I believe, how can we deal with the learning loss, and how are we measuring it? I think right now, we really haven't established the kind of metrics to which Sanjay referred. We have to do that. We need at least quarterly reports with a long checklist of things that the students are and are not doing, a redesigned report card. And the redesigned report card would have as its purpose to show how much the student is keeping up with what's going on, and how much was lost through no fault of the student just because it could not be taught in distance learning the way it was before. With this, we then need a remediation plan. And that is the purpose of getting these metrics and recording the data. What do we do with them? We have to design programs for these students. In the meantime, teachers are working feverishly just to keep up, just to identify students by whatever means they have available who are not keeping up. And they're meeting in teams to discuss how to handle this. So it strikes me that we need additional resources on this task. And we have a budget that can afford to spend this money. It's for a rainy day. It's raining. We need to bring in more experts to deal with this problem.
Thank you. The next question is another opportunity to expand on this topic. We are now going back to 60-second answers. And the question will start with Laura. With the widening student achievement gap exacerbated by COVID-19, what solutions can you suggest? Laura?
So, yeah. So one of the first things, that is starting to happen is to, bring some of these students back, either back to campus or back to learning centers to start to provide them some access to in-person help. It's not in-person classes. So I think in continuing to increase that, providing them spaces to work, providing tutors for them, whether it be just virtual or even in person. And I think we may need to be thinking about, yes, we need to assess them, but we may need to be thinking about investing in additional summer school, or even perhaps a winter break school to start to get, address some of the learning loss that has happened both in the spring and now in the fall.
Thank you. Phil?
Yeah, I want to challenge the assumption in the question that the achievement gap has been widening. I think what has been happening, in fact, is that from 2005 roughly to 2015, we had 10 years of rising achievement for all students overall, and at the same time, a narrowing of the achievement gap in 9 of those years. And at the very end, it flattened. So the gap remained the same. Then we switched to a new method of evaluating, the Common Core method. And that first year, where we had valid Common Core scores, had a real surprise. The overall achievement of other students was going up, but the performance of the Latino, Latinx students was going down. And if we look closely at this, we identify the problem. The problem is language. Los Altos High had a program to accelerate math teaching for these students and believed it would cure it. What they did not realize is that the problem was in interpreting the new questions, which were very heavily emphasizing word problems.
Thank you. Sanjay?
So yeah, and so I guess, and I also thought I was going to challenge this question as well, because and your question was about what's related to the pandemic and distance learning, and I think we don't know the numbers yet in terms of the achievement gap. What exactly is happening with the achievement gap, and so there's a couple things. One is I think we do know we have target some students that we know that basically we lost in the spring or were disengaged, and we're working to get those students back in, and many have come back in, and we're working closely with them. And so any students that are not engaged, or the critical learners that we're trying, we need to resolve those issues immediately and try to figure out how to get them back and make sure that they're learning again. In terms of the achievement gap, one of the things is that, that's just one metric. What we look at 12 different board metrics, and you have to look at the overall issue, the overall metrics that the district is doing for each of our groups of students. And that's where Phil is mentioning that, it's important to look at that. We've actually done very well, and that a lot of our groups have actually performed, continued to increase in their performance. But some of our very high achieving groups are performing even higher, and so that's where it shows that there's a gap. But some of our critical learners are actually doing much better than other districts in the county and in the state.
Thank you. All right, thanks very much. Next question begins with Laura. What else can be done in the schools and classrooms to help students that are struggling with stress, anxiety, and mental health issues?
So this is a difficult issue, right? If there was an easy answer to this, we would be doing it. And I think the district has done a good job in terms of providing support services, right, for students who are already experiencing issues. But my concern is, what are we creating? What are we doing in the culture of the school that is increasing the problem to start with? And in the past couple of years, we really have gotten to a point where we're emphasizing an academic level of achievement that is not sustainable for our students in terms of their mental health. So do we need to start to think about the conversation about what is an appropriate number of, for instance, AP courses in a student workload? You know, we have homework policy, but still, if you have 4 AP courses with the homework policy, it's too much work. So I think there are some fundamental issues that we need to, as a community, talk about. What is the
Phil? Phil, you're muted.
There. Yes. I think the issue of mental health, either before the pandemic or during the pandemic, is one that we have taken very, very seriously over the past 4 years. In the design of our facilities, we are including a wellness center for our new facilities. We have increased the use of CHAC resources in the schools by a great amount. We have hired a wellness director to coordinate all of our different activities. We have hired a social worker to alleviate the burden on disadvantaged students who have problems even outside of the educational one, which of course affects their educational difficulties. So this is a problem that the district is approaching in a unified way, organizing resources and bringing new ones to bear, and building into our curriculum programs for improving mental health through self-awareness and mindfulness.
Thank you. Sanjay?
Yes. Phil's right. I think as a district, we've done, a lot of great improvements in wellness. And I won't repeat some of the points that he made. But this is one of those issues, like we discussed equity before. These are things that we need to continuously look at improvement. How can we improve? And look at where the areas that our students are feeling stressed out, issues. I think the mobile phones and the social, all the social apps that we have, I think that also contributes to a lot of the issues that a lot of the kids are feeling as well. So there's a lot of contributing factors that we need to look at. I think the point that Laura made about possibly limiting number of AP courses that students can take in a year. I would like to look at that a little bit more. I think that is a solution I've heard before, and I would be open to kind of having that discussion and looking into that and see whether that is something that could, ameliorate the problem and reduce some of the stress that many of our students feel.
Thank you. That brings our questions to a close, and it's time for closing statements. First closing statement will be from Sanjay. You're muted, Sanjay.
Thought I clicked it. Thank you. Mountain View Los Altos is a strong school district. It's one of the main reasons why people want to live here. We're not only a district that provides high quality high school education, but we work to create equity for all students and continuously look for ways to support the success for all our students, including achieving greater equity and social justice in our society. I have the knowledge, experience, commitment, and track record to continue towards those goals. I'm proud to be endorsed by Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, State Secretary Jerry Hill, Assemblyperson Mark Berman, and Supervisor Joe Samedina. I'm also proud to be endorsed by many locally elected officials, school leaders in the booster communities, and the Neighborhood Cares Group. So please join them in supporting my campaign. Visit my website, sanjay4mvla.com, and please vote for me this November. Thank you very much, and thank you to the League.
Thank you, Sanjay. Laura.
Thank you. So I want to go back and reiterate something that mentioned in my opening, which is my dedication to being the voice of families. I think that a lot of us feel disempowered right now and that we really don't have a seat at the table as fundamentally important decisions are being made about our kids' education. We have never been in a situation before like this with distance learning, and I believe it necessitates a new paradigm of communication between students, parents, teachers, and administration. And without all of those constituents working together, we can't continue to have a strong district. And of course, families are not monolithic, so we have to hear from not just a select few families, and we're going to have to continue to adapt to a lot to change. And it's going to be much more difficult if we can't try and get everyone kind of rowing in the same direction. So I know I was hard to hear tonight, so please feel free to reach out to me if you have questions. Laura for MVLA, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Phil?
Thank you. I am uniquely qualified to provide board leadership informed by successful experience. Our superintendent and over half the high-level district administrators are new, as are Mountain View's principal and 2 of 4 assistant principals. 2 of the board's 5 members have less than 4 years board experience, and the district is facing its most challenging crisis ever. My 24 years of accomplishment on the board spanned 4 superintendencies. With those board superintendent teams, I optimally balanced diverse interests, managed enrollment swings, engaged in winning bond campaigns, and rearranged budgets in hard times to preserve educational excellence and our stellar credit rating. We enhanced the high school experience, raised achievement, narrowed the gap, improved wellness, reduced stress, introduced equity into decisions, expanded programs for disadvantaged students and parents, and much more. Overseeing MVLA's response to COVID-19 and beyond requires such experience. Please vote for me.
Thank you, Phil. That concludes our forum. I'd like to thank the candidates for participating and the volunteers who've made this forum possible. The League of Women Voters believes that a democratic government depends upon the informed and active participation of its citizens. And we hope that the insights you've gained from this forum will help in planning your vote. To look at a personalized ballot with information about your candidates and ballot initiatives, please visit the Voters Edge website, votersedge.org, after you receive your ballot in the mail. Voters Edge also provides information about major donors for the state ballot initiatives. For the November 3rd election, please vote early and deposit your signed ballot in a ballot drop box or mailbox as soon as possible. Thank you for helping make our democracy work. Good night.